Hey guys, Tyler Mahoney here with Truman Lake Fishing Intel, and I am with an all-star cast of Truman Lake. We've got a ton of experts here for our latest expert monthly roundtable dinner, and we're super excited to be kind of recapping what we did in February, as well as looking forward to March regarding all species on the lake. But first, I want to introduce everybody. Jeff Falkenberry, Endless Season Guide Service. Cody Van Atten, he's got Cody's Bait Shop and Cody's Bait and Tackle, and he's a fishing guide here as well on the catfish and getting ready to go nuts on those spoonbill.
Yep.
Here real soon.
Here real soon.
Yep. We got Hunter Bowling, who is Richard Bowling's son, all part of Richard Bowling's guide service, longtime fishing guide on the lake. We got Dylan Stocking right next to me from Get Outdoors Guide Service. He just went full time in November. He's been working for Crappie Masters, and he is lighting them up. And David Ryan, over here on the right, my right, from Dave's Custom Baits. It makes incredible baits that just flow through the water like you've never seen, and he's an expert bass fisherman. So really excited to get all these guys together. Before we dive into it, I want to say thank you to Nini's Italian Steakhouse and Catering, putting on another great dinner for us. They're located right down here in Warsaw, Missouri. So be sure to stop on by when you're down in the area. If you are a member, they do run a deal where you get a free appetizer if you're a member of Truman Lake Fishing Intel. So show them your membership and you can get a free app whenever you come in.
I didn't get my appetizer last night.
You didn't say it.
Did you have it tonight?
That's right. And then I also want to thank
Some crackers.
I also want to thank Anglers Port Marine, who helps sponsor these videos as well. They're located right between Clinton and Warsaw, Missouri. You get your Phoenix boats, Camus, low boats. They've got all kinds of great options for you, so be sure to check them out if you're in the market for a new boat. I've been told by some of the guys over at Anglers Port, and this kind of goes, I think, for everybody all over the country, lead times right now, if you don't get your order in, it's probably going to be 3 or 4 months at the earliest before you get your boat. That's how crazy boat sales are right now. So keep that in mind and give Anglers Port a call. So with that said, we'll go ahead and actually, one more announcement. Like we've been doing every month, if you share this video, this little video, it's going to be a short little preview that I'm going to post on YouTube and Facebook, tag 3 friends on our Facebook page in this post, and we're going to give away a Pro Plus membership. We're doing that every single month this year, so same thing goes for this video as well. So be sure to share it, like it, tag your friends, make sure you like our page. We appreciate it a ton, appreciate all you guys, the premium members and the free members. So with that said, now let's get into the fishing. We were just kind of chatting about February was a heck of a month, and so we're going to recap our minutes from the last video and kind of what we've been seeing over the last month. So I guess, Jeff, we'll start with you. I mean, there really wasn't a lot of fishing in February, was there?
What ice? Yeah, it was pretty well froze over pretty good, and probably as froze over as I've ever seen Truman Lake.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate to be gone for most of it in Florida. I don't know why everybody else hung around. I headed south, but there was a lot of ice on the lake, and we did fish the first part of the month some, but the latter part of the month was pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's necessarily a horrible thing. It might be a good thing.
Yeah.
It's always good for it to freeze up a little bit. Had a pretty good shad kill, a big shad kill, and we'll move on from that. We're ripping and tearing now. So. Heck
yeah. Richard, you've been fishing the lake for a long time. Have you ever seen the ice do what it did, where it went the entire lake 4 or 5 inches thick? Can you recall?
I think it did back in the early 90s. It did.
Wow.
For about not near as long, like a week. Then it got warm and it started raining, so it kind of cleaned it up quick. This time was what, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks we was out of work. So
Yeah.
I was glad to see it be gone.
Yeah.
Time to get back to work.
Yeah, that's right.
We were getting ready to put him in a mental institution. He was at home eating crayons.
Yeah.
I call him like, "What are you doing? This sucks."
The last week of the ice, I went to start going over on the Sac River. Stockton was dumping water, kept that out there, and there's enough crappie in there to keep you busy. So Kept me fishing for a day or two.
Yeah.
Long ride.
Getting your boat in. I was over there as well. He was up the river, but the ramps over there, the water had been up and it went back down. It was the only thing open because of current.
Mm-hmm.
But the silt on the boat ramps,
Oh, yes.
I was having to take broken branches from the floodwaters, and after, you put the boat in initially, it was fine because we were the only idiots putting in. But after you pulled the trailer out, all that silt got wet.
Mhm.
So when you got ready to pull your boat out, I backed my truck down the ramp, I got out, shut the door, and the truck was sliding. So I had to grab chunks and chalk my wheels to get the boat out every day because all the silt on the ramps.
Goodness
It was awful.
gracious.
It wasn't easy to get your boat in. Even though there was open water, there's still always something in those situations.
Yeah. Wow. Cody, you like to fish below the dam sometimes when Truman's frozen over, but below the dam was
below
frozen.
the dam was froze up. Water's extremely low on Lake of the Ozarks. It's about 8 foot low. It's hard to find a boat ramp to put in
Mhm.
right now. That's the biggest trouble. You got the harbor up here in town, and the next boat ramp down right now is Wigwam, and it's pretty low getting in and out of there too.
Yeah.
There's a few guys that used it this weekend, but they
Mhm.
said they was stirring mud getting in and out.
Yeah.
So if you got a bigger boat, you might not even get in there.
Yeah.
So
would now be a good time to be like walking the banks looking for all
looking
those
for
snag-
arrowheads.
Oh, arrowheads.
Yeah.
Looking for arrowheads. A lot of
I
people
was
do it.
thinking all the fishing lures that
Yeah.
have to be snagged on those rocks, but
Yeah.
Good uncovered ground right now. And
Yeah.
Arrowhead's laying on top that's been underwater for a
Yep.
little bit.
They'll be
Interesting.
laying right on top in that mud.
okay. Well, that's pretty freaking cool.
Something neat to do right now on Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah.
Get out
wear
there
your
on
good
some of the big
shoes.
mud bars. Yeah.
You'll probably sink to your ankles.
Yeah, don't wear any shoes or you'll lose them in the mud.
So, Cody, when you were kind of off here the last few weeks, you've got a big project going on. Why don't you
Yeah.
share a little bit more about it?
We've got a rental house we're working on. It's going to be just going to rent it out by the night. Going to try to get a lot of the big bass tournament guys, crappie tournament guys, catfishing groups come in. It's going to sleep probably 10 to 12 people when we're done with it.
Nice.
So it's a 3,500 square foot house. It's a 1920s rock house. So that's kind of neat. It's right by Truman Dam, within walking distance of the dam. So it'll be pretty cool when it's done.
And you've completely redone it.
We have totally rebuilt over half the house.
Wow.
So it's coming along good.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's freaking cool. Can't wait to see that. I know we'll have some pictures to throw up for everybody when you're finally ready and complete. But with that, we had a slow February, but seems like things are kicking off pretty darn good in the first week of March. Dylan, you've been out, had some pretty good trips, been out on the water.
It's been good this week after the ice got out. Crappie they're in the creeks, kind of like they were before we iced up, but it seems now they're further back in the creeks. You can catch them from front to back, but a lot of fish being caught in less than 15 foot of water right now.
Yeah. How does the ice, does the ice coming off, what draws those fish to the backs of the creeks right now, right after an ice? Has anything to do with
It's
the ice?
daylight. It's daylight hours, isn't it?
Daylight hours.
Daylight hours is
Back
long.
there.
Yeah.
And it's usually warmer back there
It's
typically.
normally
Yeah.
warmer. You got the water running in.
Especially if you got a little bit of mud, a little bit of dirty water in the shallows will be a lot warmer
Yeah.
than anywhere else right now.
Well, that length of daylight, everybody's always waiting on that magic water temperature for the crappie to move up shallow, that 55
Yeah.
to 60 degrees. But it's when that length of day gets close to 14 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's what'll trigger it a lot.
Gotcha.
It's like everything. The length of day triggers many things, just like the rut and deer,
Right.
spawning fish, people going crazy.
Yeah. yeah.
I mean, it has a lot to do with it.
That was
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So to Cody's point on the water, because I think a lot of people don't understand this, and everybody can chime in on this, but the difference between water temperature changing and dirty water versus clear water, how long it takes for each one to warm up, which one is warmer on average. What are your guys' thoughts on that and what people need to understand fundamentally about that?
Dirty water always warm up quicker because it's darker.
Mhm.
And it
A lot
retains
quicker.
It retains the temperature.
Yeah.
It hovered overnight, so the next day when it starts, it's already warmer than what the clean water would be. That's
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's because it's darker, it's got a lot of more particles
Sunlight and it holds
in
it.
it that
Yeah.
are holding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Holds light longer, or holds warmth longer. Yeah.
So so we've talked about this before, but I want to revisit this. So some of the darker structure, so like dark timber,
Yeah, black stumps.
black stumps,
Black gravel.
black gravel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the bass, I mean, on the bass stuff, David, like big boulders. I mean, what?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that's it's those are magnets.
yeah,
And I mean, they sit there and the sun's out and they just absorb the heat and there's going to be fish around them. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
It also gets that, the warmer it gets, all the algae and everything that's growing on the side of those rocks and stumps and
Mhm.
everything gets more active, produces more oxygen, draws in more bait fish, draws
Yep.
in more big fish.
Yeah.
It's just a fifth grade science class.
Yeah.
You break it down, really. That's right.
I mean, common sense type stuff, really.
Wind will also warm water,
Mhm.
When you're picking what creek to fish, the wind's out of the south, you're probably gonna be on the north end of the lake. If there's a wind blowing in there toward the back of that creek, that wind's gonna warm that water up a little bit. So rather than being on the south end of the lake, so there's a lot of variables when it comes to this time of year. 4 or 5 degrees can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Well, and it sounds like we've seen just in the last week a pretty noticeable increase in water temperature just from a week ago. I mean, what are we looking at?
Varies very big on where you're at too. And that goes back to your clear and dirty water, but like the Osage arm, lower Osage is really clear right now, or clear for the Osage right now. A lot of that water temperature is still in the low 40s. You jump over to the Grand, I had as high as 54
Oh my gosh.
yesterday on the upper Grand. So there's a big variance on where you're at.
Interesting. Going back to something you said earlier, Jeff, on the shad kill. So the ice just kills them, but we go through a shad kill every year, don't we?
It goes by the light.
Yeah. Yeah. If it freezes over and the sunlight can't penetrate into the water.
Yeah. So how does that impact fishing for, everything?
Shad kill's a good thing. Trying to fish right after a big shad kill can be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're fat and sassy.
Yeah.
They've been eating.
Yeah, they're all fat and lazy.
That's right.
But it's a process of natural selection. You got to have a shad kill, you'd just be overrun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mass produced, so you
Right.
have to have it. So it is a good thing.
Yeah. So the catfish bite was a little slow initially, right after ice out. But
It
it's-
was slow last weekend, but early, about midweek, it really started picking up and the shallows really good. So, and that Lake of the Ozarks is the same. The shallows are really picking up good down there too, if you can get in the shallows.
Mhm.
But
It's all shallow.
yeah, it's all shallow right now.
So what's like the March outlook for catfish? I mean, it's already been picking up. What should people be expecting to? What patterns should they be looking for catfish through the rest of this month?
Depending on where you're at, location. On the lower end of the lake, you're going to look for schooling fish, probably on ledges in the clear water. I do know some guys that threw some jugs out on the lower lake that caught some suspended fish. Now, they weren't like the 4 to 8 foot July catfish that they normally jug, but they did catch some suspended fish in deep water, 15, 16 foot down and 30 plus feet of water. But, on the upper end, or like on the Ozarks, like Cody was talking, we've been catching all our fish shallow, catching cruising fish, and then these fish are just up looking on wind-blown flats, looking for weak shad or dead shad or whatever. They're still cleaning up this, and so that's the fish we've been targeting. And it's not, sometimes it's a really fast bite, but it's not always a really fast bite. We pull into a place and some of the shallows, you're going to spook a lot of fish, so you're going to set up and sit 15 minutes, before you start getting bit. But when you start getting bit, then it's on like Donkey Kong. And so, it depends on where you're at. If you're fishing that clear water, look for schooling fish on the ledges. Fishing dirty shallow water, just start side scanning until you start seeing some marks and set up and wait. And if you don't catch another 20 minutes, move.
So I was going to ask what the rule of thumb is for how long you sit there before you're like, we're out.
Not very long.
If I go 20 minutes without getting a bite, I'm out of there.
Yeah.
I'm moving on.
Yeah.
I have a ADD, PhD, OCD, something weird thing. we'll even be catching them. I'll be like, I gotta look at some different scenery or something, you know, I cannot sit.
Yeah.
I just can't sit. And, but yeah, 15, 20 minutes, if I'm not getting bit, or I know that I'm not gonna get bit, you can kind of gauge it on that.
Yeah, well, once it starts slowing down, you get a really good bite when you're set up in the shallow water, and as soon as that bite kind of starts to taper off, you catch a couple last fish, and then when you go at 10 to 15 minutes without a bite, you know it's time, and you might just have to move 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
You might not have to move very far. If you're in a creek, just move over a little bit, and you'll get on some fish that ain't spooked. The problem with shallow water is any boat noise, walking around, fish splashing in the bottom of the boat, dropping a sinker. I try to make sure nobody lets a sinker hit the boat when I'm shallow because your bite will shut off instantly.
Fish that are like 25, 30 yards away.
Oh yeah, they'll hear it. In that shallow water, they spook. Now, if you get a windy day, like today would have been a really good day to be shallow, that boat noise has calmed down, you might have been able to fish one spot all day today. But where the rest of the week was fairly calm, you have to keep moving.
Yeah.
So,
And you gotta think, I have to think anyway, you know, when you catch a big fish in that shallow water, there's a lot of splashing, a lot of running, a lot of this.
a lot of noise.
It's gonna spook some things, and I don't know if they put off some kind of pheromone and they're stressed out and they've just been hooked like a wiper does or what. But you know, it seems like you catch a big fish and disturb things, it's gonna be a little bit before you get that next bite.
Yeah. Cody, you were mentioning something on social media the other day about how, what was it, like the cherry chicken or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, even that'll catch them right now.
If you find them fish
It's the
on
right day.
wind-blown banks
Uh-huh.
that are cruising looking for food, right now they are eating anything you throw out there. Right now is one time frozen shad will probably catch fish. It might be the only time of the year it will work good, but we used gar, buffalo, shad just to see if they'd eat it yesterday. I netted plenty of shad yesterday morning, but I just wanted to see if they'd eat something else, and they hit it all the same.
Yeah.
So it did not matter.
So, if you're looking to go catch fresh shad, where should people be looking
You
right
just
now?
gotta grab. There's shad in 12 feet of water,
Scattered
4 feet of water,
absolutely, yeah.
30 feet of water. It just depends on where they're gonna be in a water column. You just gotta trust your electronics and put the miles on.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Good to know. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little crappie fishing. So, Richard, you've been out, you've been single pole fishing, you've been spider rigging. I mean, what have you been seeing on your patterns here in the last week?
Creeks, from like Dylan said, from the front of the creek to the back of the creek till you get to about 10 foot. I spin my boat around and fish my way out. If I get under 10 foot of water right now, I can't get bit. There's a few fish there, but most of them's in 10 to 20 foot of water. Some of them are this deep with a live scope, and some of them are 10 foot. 10 foot's a very deep number right now for me. And I went through a bunch of rigging boats recently, picking off these fish live scoping, and I watched them rigging. There's 6 rigging boats in one creek. And I kind of went through them, stayed away, and I never seen a fish caught. But when I'd see them pick their rod up, you know, they had to have 14 foot of line, 15 foot of line, too deep, man. Some of these fish are, a lot of these fish, if I run my spider rig right now, I would run it down about 5-6 feet. Just cover water. Move a little faster because these fish are really getting to where they're chasing the bait. Instead of just creeping along, you know, speed up and they'll eat it. So, you know, creeks, 10 foot of water or more, and all these fish are going to be 1 foot to 10 foot down.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like Richard was saying, I mean, we caught fish once the sun gets up and gets to baiting on that water, on the muddy water. I mean, we caught fish. I could put a sinker on and then have my jig or minnow blow about that much, and we caught fish with the sinker out of the water
Wow.
this week. So some of them are up pretty shallow.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Richard said, if I had to pick a depth and go, it would be probably 5-6 foot.
And move fast.
And
I
go.
mean, you know, crank it up a little bit, 0.5, 0.7, make the baits move faster, you're gonna catch a whole lot more fish. But you can pitch a jig right now, 16 ounce jig, 20 feet out. You can buy that fish, and I mean, it's coming to get it.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of
We were pitching quarter ounce by them, and they were chasing
that
quarter
in.
ounce.
Yeah,
so-
I've been playing that little jig. There'd be 5 and 6 big black crappie right on top of the water, and you can pick that first one off, then the second one, and about the third one you spook them. Very effective, cover water.
Is there any particular color of jig that seems to be working better than others?
So we talked about it today on my second trip. We had 4 different colors on. I had 5 guys in the afternoon, and everybody chose a different color. Every one of them caught a limit fish.
Wow.
All 16 pounds and all shallow fish, but every single person in the boat caught their limit fish on a different color. So colored, no, just presentation, getting it on them, and getting them to shake. And once you see them shake and come up a little bit, you're gonna catch them.
Mm-hmm.
So the live scope helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody, have you been doing some crappie fishing down the main lake?
A little bit. I haven't done a whole lot on Truman. I was mainly crappie fishing in Lake of the Ozarks.
Oh, okay.
Right now, Lake of the Ozarks, any of your creeks that still have water in them are full of fish. And like Richard said, a lot of them are not very deep right now. They've come up, they're trying to get warm. They're chasing shad, looking, and it's the same exact pattern on Lake of the Ozarks. Now the main lake on Truman, they're a little bit deeper. When I've been catching bait every morning on the main lake, I'm seeing a lot of crappie in that 10 to 15 foot range, but they're in like 18 to 22 foot of water is where they're at. But that's down on the main lake of Truman, so they will be a little bit deeper. The further you go up the arm, the shallower they're going to get. So,
Steve Blake, when I was talking to him yesterday, mentioned he checked the backs of coves, pockets down the main lake, and basically exactly what you said, deeper down, and he says they had over 200 fish that they caught the last couple of days.
They are stacked up. When you find them on the main lake right now, they're in piles.
Yeah.
So
He said they had a lot of 7 to 9 and a quarter inchers, but they had quite a few of the 12-inch plus fish as well. And his big thing is just straight down vertical presentation and just sticking it right there in the shad that they're suspended around, and they freaking went to town. So
that's what the ones I was seeing. You'd find them all big shad, and then right on the sides of it would be all the crappie scattered out. And you'd throw the net, and you'd have to pick all the crappie out of your net. They was right in with the shad. So
yeah. Well, it sounds like now's the time to be crappie fishing. I don't know about the spawn. This sounds pretty damn good to me.
I always said if there was 90 days in March, it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a great time. People call the time. When's the best time to book a trip? March. Crappie? March. Catfish? March. I mean, it's just everything. They've had a long winter just like we have. And now the water's starting to warm up. Fish are getting active. They're feeding, and they're feeding, and they're feeding. And the best time to catch them is when they're feeding.
Right. So we might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I'm just kind of curious. So the spawn, I mean, you said you saw 54-degree water temperature. I mean,
Won't matter.
Okay.
Length of day.
Yeah.
Gotta
Week
have,
of April.
Yeah.
gotta have that length of day. Water can get to 70 degrees if it wants to.
Yeah.
The period of daylight's gotta get long.
Yeah. On the spider rigging stuff, Richard, I mean, what kind of equipment are we talking? I mean, could you have any 10, 12, 14-foot pole? Is there certain types of those poles? Do you want one that's real stiff, one that's got more bend to it, action? What are kind of the pointers for having the best success?
I like it. Personally, I like 14, 16-foot poles with a little faster tip on it. Get out away from the boat, especially with these fish up shallow like they are. Like Cody's talking, crappie the same way. If you like my boat's pretty quiet, you know, it's carpet. If you slam or don't slam, if you just let a rod locker pop, you watch that fish, it's
the
running.
fish are going.
I don't care if it's out there 14, 15 feet, it's running. So longer poles, 10-foot or a 10-pound line, cheap reels, double minnow rig, and just cover water. You know, you can push jigs, but for the guys that's going to start doing it, just a double minnow rig, 10-pound line, 14-foot poles, any kind of pole will work. But I use the ACC crappie sticks. I really like them. Work good, so just, you know, whatever's in your budget, get it, but try to get a pole that'll reach out there 14 foot. 16 foot. I got some 16 footers in low.
The more money you spend on the poles too, the better quality you're getting, the more sensitivity you're getting. Right now, they're hitting hard. If you're going to spider rig during the wintertime, you want something that's going to be really sensitive. That's the main thing I tell people when they come in the shop. Everybody wants a budget rod. If they're fishing spring, summer, fall, that budget rod's good. If they're fishing dead of winter when them crappie are just going to barely bump it or raise it up just a hair, they need to spend a little bit more money. So,
good to know. Here in the coming week, we've got some pretty heavy wind coming our way. I don't know if you guys are going to be out on the water those days or not.
Heck yeah.
Well, so I guess my question is, for folks that are a little more concerned about it, I mean, where are like some good general areas? I mean, should they be looking in the creeks? Are there particular areas you guys like that you would recommend, hey, this is where you should go to get out of the wind type of deal?
Bluff out of the wind.
Yeah.
Or creek out of the wind.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not going to be any specific area. It's just what you can fish.
Yeah.
First and foremost, this water is cold. So if you're
Yeah.
going to be out in this wind, you need to have a PFD on.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
You fall out when there's waves. You fall out when there ain't waves, it's bad news. You
Right.
fall out when there is waves, it's real bad news.
Yeah.
The boat can get away from you in a hurry. You think you can fall out, just get a hold of the boat and get back in. When the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour, the boat puts 15 feet between you and it in a hurry.
Right.
So first and foremost, safety when the winds. They're calling for 20 to 30 mile an hour winds with gusts over 40. I'd stay home.
Mhm.
If I didn't do it for a living,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Best
But
thing to do is study your lake map.
yeah,
You know, if it's a south wind, try to pick a creek or a bank that's going to block that wind for the next day. Because, you know, tomorrow I've already looked at the wind. I know right where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't even been in there this year, but I know the crappie in the creek. So it's a south-southwest wind, so I'm going to pick a bank that I'm going to be blocked from that, you know, live scoping. So study your lake map. That's the best way. Figure out what way the wind's blowing, get behind that bank that the wind can't get to.
Mm. Well,
that's a great thing about Truman.
yeah.
I mean, there's
You got so many different places.
I fish lakes all over the country, and you know, you take a place like Stockton, you know, 7 mile an hour wind, you can't get out of it.
Right.
I mean, it's rolling,
Mhm.
you know. And so, fortunately, Truman's one of those places where you can typically find a spot
Mhm.
out of the wind.
You can hide.
Right.
There's too many twists and turns and everything. You can get out of it.
Yeah. Same way with upper Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah.
You know, you can usually get out of the wind and catch fish down there, even if it is pretty windy. So.
Let's talk a little bass fishing.
Okay.
So, David, you fished Truman for a lot of years. What is the shindig that everyone needs to know on March bass fishing on Truman?
Man, it's really pretty simple. It
Mhm.
really is. Jerkbait, you know, I'm biased. I'm gonna throw my jerkbait.
Mhm.
So Dave's Custom Baits, Black Market 110. I myself haven't really caught a lot of fish on Truman throwing a wiggle wart style bait like my Black Market Rock Warrior.
Mhm.
And the simple fact is that when I fish that bait, I like to parallel a bank. I like for the bait to stay in contact. I like the boat to sit in about 8 foot of water, and I'm quartering that bank, paralleling but still quartering, because when a bait lands, I want it to land almost at the water line, and I'll rod tip up it, and I'll bring it for the first 3 or 4 cranks, and then rod tip down, and then it's always in contact with the bottom, rooting.
Mhm.
Well, anyone who's fished here knows there's a handful of places on this lake where you can actually do that and not have trees, stumps, blah, blah, blah. You know, and you have to weave in and out of them or whatever. So I never really chose to fish that way. Now throwing a jerk bait or throwing a spinner bait or throwing a jig on the bank and fishing some of those swing banks, and whenever I say swing banks, I'm talking about in creeks. You'll have a creek channel, a swing on, swing off. You know, is typically the first places you want to look. If they're really hard on the channel swings, then you can fish the main part of it. And that's typically your wintering areas, those main hard channel swings where it stays on it. You know, a lot of them are bluff banks and things like that. But not to say that wiggle wart won't work, because in places down, let's say, Turpin, Vance Branch, you know, places like that. There's places in the Holes Creek that you can get on banks and be able to fish them. So it's really dependent upon your style. Me, I like I think the very biggest fish of the lake are going to bite in March. The very biggest bass And March 15th, if you have a full moon that falls somewhere around March 15th, if I wanted to catch the biggest bass on Truman that I can catch, I'm fishing that section. I'm fishing the 14th through the 17th, whatever, if you've got a full moon falling right there, because they'll get, those big ones come up shallow. And I know a lot of people have talked about this over the years. I've seen it, I've caught them, I've seen the unicorn. A good friend of mine was with me and he caught his personal best years ago and weighed 9.2. The tail was bloody. It was March 13th or 16th, one of the two. That fish was up there spawning. I know it was. I know where it was. I know how it was positioned. And those big ones are big ones for a reason. They come up, they get it done early, and then they get off the bank. The biggest bass, I believe, at Truman, the biggest bass spend most of their life suspended. They don't get big by being stupid, you know. So when they come to the bank, you can catch them. So like I said, a jerk bait, a big spinner bait, and whenever I throw a big spinner bait, I like to throw a 1 ounce model. I like great big blades. I'm a willow leaf guy rather than a hubcap guy. So I'll throw an 8 and a 5 or a 7 and a 4 and a half willow leaves. And then my jig is pretty standard. I mean, it's a 1/2 ounce black and blue jig with a blue sapphire super speed crawl on it. And typically, when I'm throwing these colored baits, you know, I'm fishing on the upper ends. I'm fishing dirtier water because that warms first, and those big ones get up in that warm water. They need the sunlight, they need the warmth for the eggs and all the maturation that the eggs go through before it's time to spawn. So it's just, it's a bit of biology and just being on the water and knowing when and where and what to look for.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Biggest bass I ever caught on Truman was in March. On a spinner bait with a hubcap.
Yeah.
Slow, slow, slow.
yep.
It was just a little over 7.
Wow. Real shallow like that?
Yeah, right up against it.
Yeah.
Well, it was like a short bluff,
Mhm.
but it was like bounced it off the short bluff. You know, it barely got off of it before I
Yeah.
ate.
And those swings, and whenever I talk about those creek channel swings, those the best swings that I like to fish, and I'll throw my jerkbait right next to these. If you have a cedar tree on a gravel flat, and that creek channel has come in and cut that flat, and as it leaves, each one of those cedar trees that are out there on that roll-off, that's a staging area for those great big ones to get in those cedar trees. Years ago, when the cedar trees had more limbs to them, they used them better. Now, a lot of our cedar trees look like toothpicks, but they'll get in those cedar trees and they'll suspend high in them and sun themselves. And man, it's unbelievable. It really is. So I know that March is a great month. I mean, it's a great month for all the species. I mean, they like to bite. And if you like to catch them, then I'd be fishing in March. And you know that lots of times whenever we're talking about wind, bass, and I've always said this, if you'll go to where the wind ends, so if it's blowing out of the south and it's blowing right up in a northern cove and it blows right in the back end of it, it's going to have shad piled up and there's going to be bass back there, and you just go to where the wind ends and you can catch them.
Yeah. So you've talked about in the past, you know, you did an article about it, like your favorite arms to fish in the fall,
Yeah.
Grand, Palmy. Do you have any particular favorites for this time of year in March? I know you talked about getting in that dirty water.
Yeah, and those have changed. Those have changed just because of the age of the lake. If you'd asked me that 15 years ago, I'm an Osceola guy. I'm an Osceola guy. I mean, you could get into some of those creeks. It typically had to be 708 to 709 to get in the creeks because of the siltation and everything, but you could get in some of those creeks up there and just absolutely have amazing days. Well, in the last 15 years, bad stuff is happening.
Most of your cedars are gone on those things
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Big Muddy used to
Oh.
hold fish all spring long. A lot of them trees are broke off. Wrights Creek most of them are broke off at water level now.
That's
they're-
sad. That Wrights Creek used to be
Yeah.
such a good creek.
Yeah,
It's gonna be different now.
I
this
did
year.
catch some really good crappie in there
Mm.
Sunday though. So that was one day I did crappie fish Truman. That's where I was at. And they're just out cruising around suspended. We caught fish from 5 foot down to 15 foot down. They was just cruising all over in there looking for food.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. But Upper Grand,
Yep.
I've transitioned. It's
Mhm.
Upper Grand, and heck, a long time ago, you could still get up, in the Big Tebow, from Barker Creek on up, and fish it up to Sea Highway, and now it's kind of sketchy being able to navigate that, especially at some of the lake levels that we've seen.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, all last year for the most part.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line because like last year it was so low that you
Yeah.
could actually, run a lot of places because you see
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
you can see it.
yeah.
But then you get that happy medium. Right now is that happy medium. A lot of people say, "Oh, normal pool,
Uh-uh.
normal." That's just normal pool for the lake. That's
Yeah.
the
That's-
worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's 704, you can pretty near see everything.
Yeah.
706 to 707 3/4.
Yep.
Terrible.
Yep. 709, you're pretty well good.
Yeah.
704, you can see everything.
Yeah.
Anything between there is rough.
Mm.
It's real rough.
Especially if you haven't. I mean, we fished it for years. Heck, I've been to every arm that there is to the end of it and back, and I can run it blindfolded. But for the normal person that comes here and is like, oh, okay, yeah, check the lake level. It's 706, 25. It's just a little bit of a normal pool. Everything's fine.
I wish they wouldn't call it normal pool.
Mhm.
I don't know why. There's got to be a better name for it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing normal about
No.
it. It's like the perfect level to tear stuff up.
Mm.
Yeah.
And even at 704, or like last year, it was as low as we'd seen in a long time.
Yeah.
So even us guys that's been on it for 20 plus years, we hit stuff that we didn't even know was there because it hadn't been down that far.
Yeah.
When does the square bill bite start picking up for you?
I like to start throwing my large balsa bait when the water temperature flirts with 56 to 58.
Mm.
Because, like I said, those fish want to get shallow. Those big ones want to get shallow. And I'm not fishing it as aggressive as I normally do.
Mhm.
And wind is also the other thing. I really like to fish it in the wind early in the year because those fish are up there. They're up there for one reason, and that's to feed. You get that big bait up there, and you retrieving it. I'm not slow rolling it, but I'm not fishing it like it's July either.
Mhm.
So it's somewhere in between, and just experiment. You've got to let the fish tell you what they want. If you're not getting bit, speed it up. If you're not getting bit, slow it down. If you're not getting bit, pick something else up.
Mhm.
But typically, that's what I like to do. And those big bluegill that will get up, and people don't realize that they get there when they get there. Just think, you've been eating chicken all year and all winter long, and then all of a sudden somebody serves you up something different. They're like, oh man, I'm tired of shad. How about that bluegill right there?
Yeah.
My favorite time to throw a square bill is about the end of April when the current's running at the cut through.
Look out!
Yeah.
You got some current pulling through the cut through, you go up there to the square bill, just power pull down, let her.
That's a fact.
I had a guy send me a 5.5 inch swim bait. It's one of the, I don't know how he makes those giant ones.
Oh, yeah.
He made a smaller one. It's a bluegill pattern that it'll swim like a crankbait, but you can also kind of wake it a little bit
Yeah.
or just below the surface. I'm kind of kind of curious.
Is it one or two joints?
It's two jointed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was testing out in my lake this weekend, and it had some pretty nice action
Yeah.
to it. So,
Those are awesome baits.
talking about the bluegill kind of makes me think that might be something kind of interesting.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, Hunter, when do you plan on starting bass fish?
Coming up, I know I'm fishing Joe Bass again this year, those big tournaments with
Yeah.
him, so coming up pretty quick. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I don't know when our first one is actually, but I'm ready. Beyond ready.
I'm gonna follow you around a little bit.
You can. Come on. Go on.
No, well, good deal. Let's talk a little bit of white bass. I know that can get kind of fun.
It's kind of a discussion I had with some people a couple days ago, and I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen a fraction of the white bass that I normally do this time of year.
We're all on the main lake. All the creeks on the main lake, you know, Turpin. I've seen some schooled up in Osage Bluff. That's about the only, some of them bigger creeks down on the main lake have little pods, but it's not, no big schools, but they are the first points out in the cove, secondary points. There is some white bass on them. They're deeper, but
We were on the river, you know, typically you get up the Sac, you get up
Yeah.
some of them creeks and some of that stuff, and you'll find them up there, you
Yeah.
know, pretty thick. And what, did you see any?
Got one, never seen any more.
No, I didn't see
That's
them.
it.
I mean, I was graphing for big shad, you know, looking for shad,
yeah.
big balls of shad. They just weren't there.
I've seen some in Bell Island. There was a few white bass in there. But that, you know.
Not
it's
like,
down-
not like.
No,
March.
not normal now. In the dead water down below the dam, they are catching quite a few white bass down there. A lot of little ones. There's a few bigger ones mixed in with them.
Yeah.
But there's some guys going down there just to have fun catching them. So.
Won't they start running up the creeks here pretty soon?
That's where they should be.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I
yeah.
say, even up the rivers and,
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah.
like Richard and I were up there in February, they'll be banging up there. I mean, you
Thick, yeah.
used to, you go up there in the middle of February and run up that sack and, you know, just take the sack of little fishies in an 1/8 ounce jig head, just
Oh.
wear them slick.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're just not there.
Yeah.
They wasn't there. I haven't been back in a week or so. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Cody, when do you start the hybrid stuff? Is that more like May, June?
Usually as soon as I get done with spoonbill.
Okay.
First part of May, I'll try them a
Yeah.
couple times. If they're not hitting live bait real good yet, then I'll, usually by the third week of May, I'm hammering them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's been the day spoonbill season got over with, I've went and absolutely tore them up before.
Mm.
Just depends on what the temperature on the main lake's doing.
That's what I was gonna ask. Can you find them right now anywhere, or are they pretty sparse like the white bass?
I have only seen one school of hybrids in the last month and a half,
Mm.
and it wasn't a good school. It was maybe 10 or 15 fish, and they looked like good ones, but I was catfishing, I didn't try to fish them.
Right.
And they was back in a creek. So,
Is that where they are right now? Is that like where they go?
they should be.
Should be.
Yeah.
They should be. They should be hanging out around the mouth, and as soon as that water starts warming up, they'll run right back shallow. I've usually every spring I'll catch 2 or 3 hybrids along shallow water catfishing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's usually on your real windy days when that bait's got a lot of movement. We actually caught a crappie fishing in 2 foot of water catfishing Friday. We caught like a 16-inch crappie.
Wow.
So, and the only reason why we knew it was on there, the bobber come up to its top and started bouncing away from us, and cranked down on it, and there was crappie on there.
Yeah.
So, and that's usually what your hybrids, you'll usually catch a few of them shallow, but I haven't seen them yet, so
Yeah.
it'll be any time though.
Okay. Well, another thing I wanted to talk about that we don't really do fishing reports on, just because you can't fish for them all year, but we got spoonbill snagging season coming up. March 15th, opening day. It's kind of almost like,
Antique boat show, that's what I call it.
yeah,
It brings out all of them.
If it
Yeah.
floats, kinda,
yeah.
bring it on down.
So, I mean, what's the deal on the spoonbill? Where can you find them? How do you go about doing it? What's all the tips and tactics?
Live scope.
Graphing.
Yeah.
Graphing. You know, even if you just got an old fish finder, look for them. If you're not seeing fish, don't waste your time. They're not there. Mainly, the upper Osage right now has got a ton of fish on it. Tally bent up. even up in the river, well, Dylan and Jeff, they
Yeah.
both said there's a lot of spoonbill up around Osceola, tons of them. A couple other people have told me that. There's actually fish already up here towards Warsaw on,
Saying they're in Warsaw too.
yeah. There's fish all over the place right now. They're just scattered out in schools, but once you find them, then start fishing for them.
What does a spoonbill arch look like on a graph?
Depending on what graph. You can, if you've got a decent fish finder, you can actually see the bill on them.
Okay.
You know, you'll see a little hook off the tip of them, and that tells you
Okay.
it's a spoonbill.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got active imaging, and you'll see that arc, and then on one end, it'll have on his bill end, it'll be a fine line.
Yep.
You know, you can see
It's
the whole fish.
real
in the
small
arc, and then you
tip.
got this fine line.
It'll be kind of like the purplish blue, not this hard of a return.
Yeah, not the red yellow.
Yeah.
It'll be-
All that will be a real hard return on them is the head area.
Okay.
Great big one, the body's going to have a harder return, but most of them will have kind of their tail part will be lighter colored.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get the beet red, and then it'll have a beak off of it.
Yeah.
So that's the easiest way to tell. And even some of your cheaper fish finders will show that now. So
Yeah, anything will
Yeah.
help you find spoonbill.
Yeah.
Not like you're looking for scattered out.
yeah, then they school up. There will always be some scattered, but your majority of them you want to fish where they're schooled up.
Mhm.
So
Now, do you? Because I know they've kind of perfected the methods here in recent years, where you can like troll for them.
Yeah.
Right? Is that?
you can troll lead, you can troll deep sea divers. That honestly the easiest way to catch them pretty much right now. You just set the rods in the rod holder and go. There's different ways you can do it, but it's really good for older people, good for kids.
Mhm.
Anybody can do it that way. So my boy was 4 last year. He probably caught 8 or 10 spoonbill himself, all by himself last year. So wound him in right in the rod holders.
So for those that are watching that aren't as familiar with spoonbill, and you mentioned dipsy divers, fill us in on what that is, how it works.
It's
what it does.
basically like a troll plate that they use for trolling for salmon, lake trout up in the Great Lakes. But now they've kind of replaced the weight as you're snagging, and it actually holds your line down at one certain depth. So you want to troll 4 to 5 mile an hour, somewhere in there, depending on the current, and just go until you hook up on a fish, pretty much.
Figure out how much line you let
Yeah.
out, how deep you're gonna
Yeah,
run.
it depends. There's some cheaper divers. They run a little bit different. If you run the actual Dipsy Diver brand, however deep you want to be, times it by 3 and set your line counter, and you're right where you need to be.
Mhm.
So it's really easy if you're running the actual Dipsy Diver brand, or there's some cheaper no-name ones that they're getting from China. They're identical and they're exactly the same. So
So when you hook up on one, is the rod just like?
it just starts stripping line.
Yeah.
Probably set it a little
It
loose,
starts,
yeah.
you set your drag loose. The minute you
Click
hit
her
on, it sounds like your reel's gonna blow up.
Yeah.
So,
Because you got them in a holder, you know,
Yeah.
you hit a 60-pound
Yeah.
fish at 5 miles an hour.
Mhm.
You know, you want to
It's
run the dragger
screaming.
loose with the clicker on so you can hear it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Burn up a lot of reels.
Yeah.
It's gotten really popular.
Yeah.
I mean, snagging's
It's
got.
getting to where probably 3/4 of your people are trolling now instead of jerking.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot funner if you hit one jerking than it is trolling. But
I've only ever
the
been
trolling's
once.
the easiest way.
Yeah, I've only ever been once in my life. I think I was 16, 17. It rained. It was 40 degrees out. It was freezing cold.
Perfect snagging trip.
And we were jerking. I gotta tell you, we were out there for 4 or 5 hours, and I was like, "This is good. This
Yeah.
is all the spoonbilling I need to do." So
I remember trying to put a boat in about 8, 9 years ago. I was on a trip. I had some clients from out of state, and I was trying to put it in Osceola at Crow's Crossing, and we had a blizzard. You could not see across the river hardly. It's like, are we really going out in this?
He talks about them schools of fish, though. Spoonbill are a little bit different, seems to me, than what we talk about, like a school of crappie,
Yeah.
or a school of bass, or whatever. These schools will be, I mean, let's see them a mile and a
Yeah,
half long.
they will be big. I will get on one school of fish as soon as season starts,
yeah,
and I will follow that school of fish till I don't want to follow it anymore, and I'll jump on the next school that's moving up.
yeah,
And like I said, it may be a mile.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they'll be huge.
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
So, I know there's folks out here that don't know anything about spoonbill. Why do you have to snag them?
Well, all they eat is plankton.
Yeah.
So you're not going to actually catch them in the mouth on
Mm-hmm.
any kind of bait or anything.
Just a filter feed.
Yeah.
They just filter. So
So what are, if someone was interested in like booking a trip with you or just doing it on their own, I mean, what are some of the general rules, regulations, etiquette involved with snagging spoonbill that folks should have a high level understanding
the
of?
main thing, if you're on Lake of the Ozarks, you have to be below the 65 bridge.
Mhm.
You can't snag up above there. From there to the dam's safe zone for them.
Mm-hmm.
The limit's 2 fish per day, 4 in possession. You cannot keep the eggs. The only way you can keep the eggs is if you take the whole fish to your house and process it there, and then you can keep the eggs for caviar yourself. They are highly illegal to transport out of the fish.
Yep.
You don't want to get caught with them. You can't use them for fish bait like they used to.
Dang it.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. That's the main rules.
Yeah.
So,
I know years ago my dad was out with David Harms and they were just fun fishing for spoonbill. Came back to the dock and I don't know what it was. It was like a bunch of Russians
Yeah.
that were doing a bunch of illegal harvesting as caviar. They made a huge bust when they got back to the dock and saw them trying to basically dump the fish and get away with the caviar.
Yeah.
So kind of wild that that's a thing.
That stuff's pretty expensive. I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of the highest, the sturgeon and paddlefish, and there's one more that's a really high sought after roe.
Yeah.
yeah.
Hunter, you sound like you had some good stories about live scoping them.
Oh, it's easy. You can watch your hooks, pitch out to and watch your hooks hooking in that spoonbill. You can pick the one you want, which one you want, what size you want. It's unreal.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they're snagging on the bottom. A lot of the spoonbills I see with live scope, they're shallower than you think.
Mm-hmm.
I've caught a spoonbill where I set the hook on there, I splashing out water. They're
Oh.
that shallow. I also noticed, it's kind of weird thing, if you break off a hook in a spoonbill or a weight, you'll see it on that spoonbill, it'll be a foot under the water. Every single one I've caught. You can just see the weight hanging off there. I don't know why they do it, but they get real shallow. And what I do, I just find somewhere out of the current, that live scope, that way my boat can actually chase them down.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I can get out of that current, I can find a spoonbill, seems like. So
How close up on them are you getting before you drop in?
10 foot.
Okay,
But
so
Right
that's,
up on
just
it.
do a nice little bass pitch on it, and
They're not too spooky.
No. But if you do hit them wrong, the line hits them, they'll take off, but you can chase them back down.
Well, your dad's gone. Does the live scope take the fisherman out of fishing?
Yeah. 100%. No doubt in my mind on that one.
Yeah.
But it's fun. Those deeper spoonbill, if you're going to use live scope, don't even try to catch them. The ones that are on the bottom, go for the ones that are suspended. They're a lot easier to catch.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed just even this summer on the Osage arm, hundreds, if not thousands of them coming up to the surface.
Oh, in the summertime.
All summer long they jump.
Mhm.
Said you'll be running. I've had them like where you duck.
Yeah, pretty sure they're gonna come in the boat. with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you don't see more dead spoonbill. Well, you guys might see just getting clipped by.
I
rocks.
usually hit 2 or 3 a year.
You'll
Yeah.
feel them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do they do that? I've never had anybody answer that question.
was
to me.
oxygen.
Why in the
I thought it was-
summertime
I thought it
do
was
those
oxygen.
spoonbill do that?
I've heard oxygen. I've also had some biologists tell me it's to clean their gills out. I really don't know.
Because they
I've
do
had
such a
different
graceful-
biologists tell me different things. So, but you look
Freshwater whale.
whales do the same thing.
Yeah.
They've got the same gills. So, and they say whales do it to clean their gills out. So that might be why the spoonbill do it.
They do it just like that. I mean, they
Yeah.
don't like porpoise out like they're actually jumping. They do it straight up, flop, so they get a good smack. So
Yep.
whatever it is, like you said, it's cleaning their gills. Whatever it is, they have to have the impact.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm just jumping for fun. It's got to be an impact jump. You know what I mean? They go as high as they can go and
Yep.
fall on their side.
Yeah.
An impact jump that hits the trolling motor while you're doing 70
Yeah.
is not good. It's messy.
A pelican and a spoonbill.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that one's bad too.
Not good.
What's the pelican story?
Oh, they don't get out of the way.
Oh.
You think like you're running,
They're not
and you're
fast
like
enough.
pelicans, and so you kind of ease off, and you think, well, they're gonna fly. They're gonna fly. They're not flying. Nope, he didn't fly.
Oh,
Well, and you saw a lot of dead pelicans.
Yeah, the whole river.
Yeah.
Every 25 yards is a dead pelican.
But that was what, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was right after the big freeze.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if they were froze to death, if the coyotes got them when they didn't have a place to roost.
I wonder if the coyotes didn't get
I
them,
mean,
maybe.
there was dead pelican after dead pelican after dead pelican.
I've seen some coyote tracks out on the ice, so
Yeah.
I mean they was out there for sure.
I thought maybe they didn't have a place to roost, so coyotes were just out there whacking pelicans, because I mean, there's a pile of dead pelicans on that
There's a
river.
bunch, but I never, the ones that all floated by me, looked
Weren't
like
chewed up.
wasn't chewed up, not a feather missing.
Yeah.
I think it's the weak ones that don't leave that froze.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
I mean, I've been seeing pictures of
Someone
deer.
got bored
People
when they
found
couldn't
deer just
fish.
literally wholly
Shot.
frozen in their beds. I
Yeah.
mean, it was bad on wildlife.
It was weird. Definitely weird.
So, do you guys see any animal tracks like going on a mile-long bridge, like out across the ice?
Look, I saw a video of a red fox crossing Lake of the Ozarks.
No, that's pretty cool.
And I was just thinking about that little fox, like, what went through his head? I've always wanted to go over there.
Yeah.
How long would it take you to walk around?
Yeah. There was one on Stockton Lake because Stockton froze over. Someone videoed a beaver walking across the whole lake.
Yeah.
And he was mad.
He really was. Like, what the?
He was probably stomping.
Yeah.
He was walking real slow. Like, you could tell there might have been a little attitude there. Hey, Hunter, on the spoonbill, when you're live scoping them, what kind of equipment are you?
I use a catfish rod, and then I use like an 8-ounce weight, and then 12-aught hooks.
Mhm.
And I run two just like a normal snagging deal. And I can watch that weight go down, watch them hooks, and I know right when to set the hook on them. But I use a lighter tackle, a little bit funner to reel them in, and,
Mhm.
but easier to pitch out to them.
And you're letting it get right below them.
Yep, you get it right past them, right below them, and you can watch your hooks go right in that spoonbill.
Yeah.
It's
So
pretty cool.
what's the biggest one you pulled out?
Last year was 60-some odd pounds.
Wow.
It was a pretty good one, but hopefully this year get a real big one.
Yes.
Hoping.
Really good for your carpet and bass boat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, make sure you lay them in the carpet.
It gets pretty stinky.
When I was still doing the Kansas City Star Fishing Report, there was that one, it was a couple years ago, that some lady caught that giant
Yeah.
that was sitting across her lap. That was the Kansas City Star photo for the
Yeah.
Fishing Report that week. It was kind of funny because there's a lot of blood that comes out when you snag them, and the Kansas City Star made the photo black and white, so you couldn't actually
Yeah.
see the
Yeah.
blood in the photo.
Yeah.
That was that lady's first snagging trip ever. I think she was in her 60s or late 50s or something. Always wanted to go. Her boy bought her the trip,
Mm-hmm.
and we had just dropped rods in, and we didn't go 20 feet and hit that fish.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first one she ever caught. Was 90,
I was gonna
a
say-
little over 90 pounds.
It was a freaking
Yeah.
just.
How many bands did you catch last year?
Last year we caught 10 banded fish on Lake of the Ozarks, and 9 of them was Truman fish that went through the dam.
Really?
Cool.
That tells you kind of the ratio of, and I think that's why a lot of these fish on upper Lake of the Ozarks aren't going back down. I actually think that's a Truman fish that are just kind of not knowing where they're at or what they're doing. They're still
Good in your life.
Does anybody know the way back to Truman? We've been stuck here for months.
Yeah.
Surfing,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden we got here.
Yeah. Yep. We were having a party, everybody went down the waterfall, and here we are.
That's kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of interesting in a way to how they survive. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess
A lot of them die.
Okay.
Whenever they're running floodgates, there's a ton of spoonbill that are floating dead on the
Barely kicking.
Yeah, and a lot of them are ones that have come through the floodgate.
Well, they're all cartilage, and they got that giant head with those big gills, and when that hard water gets in behind those gills, just like ripping their head off.
Blows
You
their
know
gills
what I
out.
mean? It just blows them
I've
out.
seen them
Right.
pretty much with their heads ripped
Yeah.
off,
And that's what gets them.
So,
Mm.
I don't, Richard and Cody do all the spoonbill trips, but I don't do it. I don't do any, but I asked about the bands. I don't do spoonbill trips unless I absolutely have to. I send everybody to Cody. But the last trip I did was probably 4 or 5 years ago. These guys kind of talked me into it. They showed up, and we put in over there on the Osage, and we drove up marked a little deal of fish. I said we was just dragging cannonballs, not dipsy divers. And I dropped one down on my rod. This guy brought his own snagging rod. You know, it still had tag hanging on it, had line on it and everything. And so I dropped this guy down, and I got to rig this other guy's pole. So he's holding the rod, and I'm rigging this pole. I mean, we didn't go, like he said, 30 yards. It's fish, banded. So we get it in, put it in the live well, get him set back out. I get this other rod rigged up. I get it dropped down, hit the bottom. Didn't go 30 yards. This guy catches one. It was banded.
Wow.
And then we caught their other two, and I guarantee we didn't go a half mile the whole day. I was like, what do you guys want to do now? It made me look like a heck of a spoonbill guy, and I don't do any of that.
Yeah. So on these bands, what was like? Do you call it in, or how? What kind
You
of?
call it in, they send you information on where it come from, where it's tagged at. You have to give them the length of the fish, and there's measured from the eye to the fork of the tail. I think they're done with their tagging program. Last year, I heard they was normally if you call it in, they give you a T-shirt or something like that. And I heard they was out of the T-shirts towards the end of last year. So I think that tagging program is just about over with for right now.
Do they tell you the age of the fish?
They don't.
Okay.
They actually don't know the age of them when they net them.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
that's how they tag them. They end up netting them all and then tag them and release them. So
And if you're looking for a tag, if you catch a spoonbill, it's just like a duck band that they
Yeah,
clamp on.
right on.
Yeah.
So they're trying to gather, I guess, length information, measuring growth rates.
yep.
Migration.
Where they end up.
Migration.
Yeah, they're trying to get how fast they grow in the period of time from when they tagged them.
Gotcha.
Trying to find out. They actually a couple of years ago there was a group with the conservation that was actually putting trackers in them, and they had if that fish went underneath certain bridges, it would ping, and then they would know which way them spoonbill went to migrate. Like there was, I think Z Highway there at Tally Bend had one. The one there at Crows Crossing, I think, had one. And then the bridge on Niangua. A lot of people don't think about snagging the Niangua arm of Lake of the Ozarks, but it is absolutely full of them. I know they had a tracker on it to see how many was actually going up there to spawn.
You know where the great big ones come from usually? Is down Iowa?
Yes, it is. That's most of the 100-pound fish I heard have come out last year was all on the Niangua, just because they don't get fish down there.
Yeah.
You know, they do. They're in deep water. A lot of people fish for them, but not successful at them. So, yeah, he'll be down there now. He's like, yep, 9-1, looking it up. Larry Gale.
That's right. Larry Gale.
Yep. Yep.
So I guess when water is 25 feet above whatever, and you're driving underneath the bridges, and you see that little device under there, you don't mess with it. That's a
Yeah,
that's a
I don't know if
spoonbill.
they've still got them on there, but I know a couple years ago they did. I don't know, I think I caught 3 or 4 fish that had the tracking devices in them. I gave back to the conservation, so.
So I guess they just surgically implanted.
They cut a slit in their belly, and then they
Put it on another fish.
stuck it up in there, and then they stapled them shut or
Band-Aid.
yeah, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah, but you could actually see the slit where it had been cut, and that's how I knew they was in there.
Just leave it in your boat and go back and forth across it.
Really mess them up.
Driving circles. Okay, so favorite way to eat them?
About the only way I like them is smoked. Put them in a brine, put them in some kind of marinade, throw them on the smoker for a couple hours, and they're pretty good. A lot of people like them fried. I'm not crazy about it.
No.
You have to clean them extremely well for them to be edible fried, I think.
By extremely well, he means a 50-pound fish, you get about this
Yeah,
much.
pretty much. Pretty much. Some people cube them up, throw them in crab boil. A lot of people like them like that, eat them like you would shrimp or lobster or something. I've done some big crawfish boils, and I'll chunk one up and throw it in there with the crawfish and shrimp and stuff, and people eat the heck out of it. But there's a lot of different ways you can eat it. So,
I've definitely always heard very mixed reviews
yep.
on it. So
A lot of people love it. People that don't like fish love spoonbill because it's not like the fish texture. Your people that really like fish aren't crazy about spoonbill usually.
Maybe I can finally get Sammy to eat some fish then.
Yeah,
She won't eat
See,
fish, she won't touch it, she hates
hy-
the texture of it.
hybrid has that same type of texture. It's
Yeah.
a real hybrid is a real dense,
A little
meat.
bit tougher maybe.
Yeah, and I love it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, hybrid's awesome.
Hybrid, if you can catch a hybrid out of cold water, that is probably my favorite eating fish. Hybrid and blue cat are right there at the top.
Mhm.
But once it gets real hot during the summertime, I'm not crazy about either one of them. But
I don't mind spoonbill, I just can't get past the taste and the smell.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awful. It's terrible. I mean, they're funny. I love to
Yeah.
catch anything. You
Yeah.
know, I don't mind going catch something, but my land.
yeah,
I would think it's like, there's so many good fish in the lake to eat.
Mhm.
why eat that?
Yeah, it's like walking into a grocery store and somebody say, pick out anything you want to eat, and you go get some Vienna sausages or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much good fish out there to eat.
Mhm.
Maybe some burgers.
Well, we're coming up on an hour here, and so is there any final thoughts on anything?
Jerry's final thoughts. Man, just be safe in this colder water and this big
Yeah.
wind. We're gonna have weather coming as we roll into spring. It's gonna be thunderstorms. It's gonna be all
Yeah.
this stuff as we roll into spring. Safety starts to be a real big concern when you're
Yeah.
out in bad weather. That's,
And those thunderstorms are going to be the things that warms the water the fastest.
Yeah.
I mean,
That warm rain running in is,
absolutely.
as soon as you get some of that warm rain, all your fish are gonna be in them creeks for sure.
Yep.
Right now, that's, water flow is probably what's keeping your white bass and hybrids out of there right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they need some current direction to bring them there, I think. Both of them are kind of current fish during the spawn. You know, they like that water movement because that's usually where the bait is.
Yep.
Right now, there's a lot of bait just hanging out in the main lake, cruising around, don't know what it's doing.
Yep.
So, I think that's, your hybrids and stuff are just out there with them right now,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I think when we review the minutes on next month's meeting, we're gonna be talking about, well, we told you to get out and fish in March.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Good month.
we're gonna have a lot of photos and great stuff to talk about. So-
LMM, last month's minutes.
Last month's minutes, that's right. Well, thank you guys for watching. I want to say thank you again to Nini's and Anglers Port Marine. One more time, we got Jeff Falkenberry, Endless Season Guide Service, Cody Van Atten from Cody's Bait and Tackle and Guide Service, Hunter Bowling and Richard Bowling from Richard Bowling's Guide Service, Dylan Stocking over here from Get Outdoors Guide Service, and David Ryan of Dave's Custom Baits. We appreciate them a ton for being here and for helping make Truman Lake Fishing Intel what it is, a place to get the best information, real time, most up to date that you can get on the lake. So if you're a member and you're watching this, please share, tell your friends and family the kind of information we're putting out. We appreciate it, and all the support is what keeps this thing going all year long. So looking forward to an awesome 2021, and we'll look forward to catching you guys on the next one.